You're watching the Mojo Nation Play Creators Conference. I'm Deej Johnson, and today we are joined by Sally Jacobs from Bean Toys to recreate a popular format, Desert Island Discs, where I ask Sally what it is that she would be marooned with if she could be marooned with toys and games of her choice. So welcome, Sal. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Very good.
I'm pleased to hear it. Lockdown treating you well?
It is. It's been very different for me, being a mum of three. I've kind of turned my focus on playing with my three kids and having some time with them. But I'm looking forward to getting back to inventing and designing in September. But no, it's been brilliant, and also an insight to spend time with my kids, having fun and playing.
Well, I was going to ask, that was exactly the thing that came to mind when you said about that. I suspect many inventors must be looking at the environment of being locked in the house with three kids and being their school teacher and being their parent and being a children's entertainer. That must give you a slightly different complexion than what you would normally have bustling them off to school.
It does. It was nice, though, to spend time with them. I can't say the teaching was very good. I've decided I'm not a very good teacher, and we kind of went off field a bit, and we were doing kind of swinging in the trees, building dens, going in the paddling pool, bike riding. You know, there wasn't. Oh, we shouldn't be saying this in case the teachers are watching.
Well,
No, we did a bit of work, but I wasn't a very good teacher, I have to say.
I'm curious though, because I feel this way about my friends' kids. I'm a wonderful uncle. I'll make a terrible parent. I wonderful. I turn up magic tricks. I've got toys and games and Lego to give you, but don't ask me to discipline the kids. It's not for me. Is that the same with you? That you'd rather be playing a game than
Yes, it was hard, and the discipline got worse and worse as lockdown went on. We kind of started off well, and but I think as the time went on, it was kind of everything went out the window, and it was whatever we can do to kind of get on and make it fun and relaxing for the kids.
Yeah, I bet that must be actually very difficult. It's not for me. I mean, I just wince at the thought of spending any time at all with any kind of parental responsibility, let alone teaching on top of that as well. So the first thing I should have started, I knew I'd get distracted. The first thing I should have said, you're an inventor yourself.
Yes.
With Bean Toys at the moment. That's your own company. But prior to that, I sometimes undersell you. I'm talking to people and I sort of say, but you've been at Hasbro, you're at Lego.
I did Lego freelance when I was doing an MA. I answered an ad in Design Week to become a freelance Lego designer. And I got that, which was amazing. And that was my first kind of job in the toy industry. And I lived in this very studenty house in Birmingham, and they sent me this huge box of Lego, and it was amazing. It was just like, and they said the brief was just play with the Lego, come up with ideas, don't worry about manufacturing, don't worry about cost, we just want ideas. So it was kind of the best job to get into the toy industry, because it was just using your imagination and playing with Lego. And it's kind of, yes, this is where I want to be.
And is that, I mean, that's, I'm not sure, how long ago would that have been? I'm just curious about the process. Well, perhaps we should just draw a veil over that.
That was many years ago. Gosh, when was that? That was about 96.
Oh, that's okay. That's
a long time ago.
Yeah,
but that's my age.
That was the process, though. They more or less sent you a big box of Lego and said, just ideas. Yeah, they had a list of things. They didn't want you to think about the manufacturing. They didn't want any cost. I mean, obviously, they wanted you to think about the consumer and how the consumer would play. And being very young then, I wasn't too far off the consumer, I guess. So yes, it was just coming up with ideas, and it was a really amazing start. And just being sent this big box of Lego was fantastic in itself. Oh gosh, that does sound like a good way to do it. Funny enough, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about this, because it's difficult for me sometimes on the outside looking in to work out at what point a designer or an inventor would look at an idea that they've got and then start adding in the criteria that Lego omitted from their process. So at what point in a process would you normally look at it and thinking, well, I could do this with magnets, but magnets are expensive? Or is that more the publisher's job?
No, I think now, as you get more experienced and having worked in Hasbro and obviously had to design products that are manufacturable and hit a target cost, you always have that in the back of your head. And you try in the brainstorm process to kind of blow it out as much as possible, but you can't be unrealistic. You've got to have some parameters in place. So I think as you get more experience, you are thinking that from the offset, but you also don't want it to dampen your creativity to begin with either. So there is a balance, I think, of you know, you don't want to say, I've got this fantastic idea, but it can never be manufactured and it's going to be hundreds of pounds, and the consumer, you know, can't afford, you know, isn't going to spend that much money.
Right. It's one of the weaknesses, I think, of brainstorming, where people sort of more or less say, come on in, the water's lovely. It's a blue skies session. It's blue skies, blue sky. And you come in and you say, well, these ideas are absurd. They're absolutely absurd. There's no way you could possibly do half the things that end up in a board in a badly run brainstorming. But the illusion of creativity is created because possibly if you start with this very big idea and then you take chunks out of it, you might end up with a much smaller usable idea. So yes. I guess that's the balancing act that
exactly. And you do have to blow it out, because otherwise you're not going to do anything innovative. So you do have to kind of like start with kind of things that, you know, are a bit random or radical, I guess, or out there, but then, you know, you do have the parameters in the back of your mind.
I tend to think of creativity as being kite shaped, that you sort of have to go out as far as you can, but there's a point at which you have to start reining it back into one very solid point. Yeah. That's fascinating. So you came to be in the industry. Was that straight from, you said you lived in sort of a digs in Birmingham by the sound of it, so did you come straight from university to Lego?
Yeah, so I was in Sheffield Hallam University doing product design, and we did a lot of consumer products there, toasters and knives. It was brilliant. It was really good. And I got to my final year and I was a bit lost. We had to choose what products we did for our final year, and I was kind of, I don't know. And I was uninspired, and I went to my lecturer, and he said, oh, what about toys? And I was like, what? People design toys? What? I just hadn't really thought about that. And it was one of those moments. I just remember it coming out of his office going, this is it. This is what I want to do. So from there, I did cold call Hasbro, various companies to try and get an insight into what the toy design area was like in the UK and the job situation. Managed to get hold of Richard Hayes at Hasbro and Storm, who were really, really helpful. And then from there I went on to do my MA in Birmingham, and then got a job freelancing for Lego. But then as part of my MA, I needed to do 6 weeks in-house. So again, I got in contact with Richard Hayes and Storm Mulcair at Hasbro Europe, and they took me in for 6 weeks work placement, which turned in, I think I was there 13 years in total, 12, 13 years at Hasbro. But it was amazing. Those years. It was such a brilliant kind of foundation for designing toys, because we did everything manufacturing. Obviously we came up with the ideas, we did the brainstorming, and then our ideas went through to manufacture. So you were working with the engineers, you were working with the structural packaging engineers, you were working with the graphic designers. I mean, as a young person that's just graduated, it was just a fantastic learning. And the people at Hasbro in the design team were so experienced, and everybody was kind of really innovative, and just everybody was really excited about being in the industry and about toys and games. So it was amazing.
Gosh, that does sound like the best possible way to arrive in the industry, to get that kind of grounding, because wherever you go from there, you've always got that Hasbro thinking.
I know, it was amazing. And they even, at the time, it was a fantastic design department, and I was lucky enough to work on My Little Pony for a short stint, and they sent me out to Hong Kong and China just to see how My Little Ponies were made, so that when we were designing, we really knew, how the roto mold worked, and the hair routing machine, which was incredible. And we saw all that firsthand, and it was just, an amazing experience.
You shouldn't talk to me about hair routing.
Yes.
It's a very sore point with me. remains a bit of an Achilles heel. But you mentioned My Little Pony. So one of the questions that we ask on the format, when I eventually get around to it, I'm really not interested, it's a terrible format. But when I do get around to asking you, I was going to ask about the things that you would have on an island. But in terms of the things that you played with as a child, I think My Little Pony was one of them, right?
Yeah, mainly Cindy when I was really young, and then I think Strawberry Shortcake was my main doll to play with, a mini doll, and I collected all the mini dolls. I saved up my pocket money, went to WordWhizz, and bought the Strawberry Shortcake collection. I love them because of the smell and you know, the different styles, and they had a little pet that they came with, which was brilliant. And I remember just building worlds for them out of shoe boxes under my bed with my sister. So yeah, so Strawberry Shortcake, Cindy early on, and then I did play with My Little Pony a bit later on.
So, but you ended up playing with My Little Pony, and then that was one of the first things you worked on. So that sort of traversed.
Yes, and I really wanted to work on it because I remember the boys in the playground at school used to, because they had that advert when My Little Pony from Hasbro, and I've got such a bad singing voice. And I just remember from Hasbro. And so when I went into the industry, it was like, from Hasbro, I've got to find this Hasbro. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. I'm amazed that you sung there. That was very brave.
I tell you, voice as well.
Oh, so don't let me sing. You've never heard anything like it. So I was curious about something you just said there, though. You played with the toys, but I think I heard you say you would make little houses for them out of shoe boxes.
I did, yeah. We didn't. I didn't have, and I'm not sure if it was everybody in that time, but or just my family. We didn't have the big play sets, you know, that you have nowadays, all of the big plastic play sets. I just literally had the dolls. So anything I wanted, I made. So, you know, all of the houses, I'd make clothes for them. I'd make other little things out of clay for them. So all of the other bits and bobs that I needed, I would make and build for my Strawberry Shortcakes.
And that's from that, can I infer that you're always quite a creative child? Were you always in that way? You were.
I was, yes, yeah. I was brought up in Wales, so very rural upbringing, and we didn't have telly for a long time, so I was just always building dens, climbing trees, making clothes for chickens. I remember me and my sisters made an abseiling thing to go down my mum's banisters. I made a trap for my sister to catch her, various traps for my sisters. So literally we were just making stuff the whole time and also if it was rainy, then we did a lot of craft stuff, craft kits. So we did raffia making and the plaster of Paris. I think they call them shaker makers now, but they weren't like that in those days. Making and painting those. So yeah, there was a lot of making and painting and creating going on.
Yeah, but I'm not absolutely 100% sure I heard whether I imagined you say, did you say at one point they're clothes for chickens?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we made all sorts. We had a little tent and we had chickens. Well, we built a tent over my mum's washing line once, I remember. I don't know if people really want to hear this. Made clothes for the chickens. The chicken went in there. I just always remember it laying an egg in the tent, which we were very excited about.
I don't know for whom it would suit, but Clothes for Chickens sounds like it would be a good name for a book.
Yeah,
an autobiography, maybe.
It could be a new toy collector thing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, maybe we shouldn't broadcast that. Maybe we'll bleep that bit out.
You can actually now. I've seen get little high-vis jackets for chickens in case you want to take them out.
Well, do you know, you mentioned this. I was in a pet shop. It's not like I knew this was going to come up, but I was in a pet shop in locally. This is before lockdown. And I saw these incredibly realistic rubber eggs.
Oh, yes. They're brilliant.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I didn't really know what I was going to do with them. They were terribly expensive. They weren't like, you know, you can get juggling eggs for a $5. So these were very expensive, and I picked them up and I said to the woman in the pet shop, I said, I'm really curious, who other than me would buy these? And it turns out farmers buy them.
To put them under the chickens so they think they're broody. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I had absolutely no idea about that.
But they're also good. You can do a prank with them in the kitchen. So if you're making an omelette, so I've done it with my kids. So that you're making an omelette, and you go catch and turn on the rubber one.
I'm certainly gonna try it. I'll do it on your kids. I'll come around your house and do it on your kids. No, it was very bizarre. And I did say to the woman at the pet shop, I said, because we're in the middle of an urban, we're nowhere near a farm, and this farm's miles away. So I said, who on earth do you sell these to? She said, we've never sold any. Rows of them. Hoping that I'll come in. And to this day, I don't know what to do with them.
Well, there you go now. You can prank all your friends with them.
Now I know. Now I know what I should be doing. And luring chickens in so I can make them cravats. And other accessories. Beautiful. So in terms then of, if you were taking one of your childhood toys, we had My Little Pony, Strawberry Shortcake, and we had Cindy, which doesn't get a lot of look in these days. I mean, but when I was growing up, Cindy and Barbie seemed to be like,
I think they were. I mean, yeah, I mean, from my perspective as a kid, I think my mum let me have Cindy because she seemed a bit more, what's the word? Down to earth, not sassy, I think.
Yes,
she was
down
a bit
to
more
earth.
like the home girl, she might have been at home baking, whereas Barbie was sort of out partying, I think, a bit more. So she was a bit of a better role model, I think, my parents.
Yeah. Interesting. Of course, it's all a mystery to me, but I can imagine well that's how it's come about, with the parents saying, well, Barbie's not an ideal role model, although I think they're fighting to correct that balance latterly.
I think she is now. Yeah, I think she totally is now. So yeah, all hail to Barbie. I don't want to put her down or anything.
No, God forbid. There'll be no Barbie shaming here.
No.
So Cindy, Strawberry Shortcake, and My Little Pony, if you had the option to take one of those toys to a desert island, there is hope of rescue, I should say, on this desert island. So for the interim, for the duration that you are stuck on the island, which one of those three childhood toys would you say that's the one that I would take away with me?
I think weirdly My Little Pony, just because it's more I guess it's got so much heritage for me, just going to Hasbro and working there and getting a dream job in the toy industry. It just symbolises all that, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think there would be a nostalgic kick with that.
Nostalgic kick, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've just realised that Pony's kit, it wasn't a pun that I intended. I certainly don't regret the pun now that I realise it's there, but it wasn't my intention. It wasn't my intention to go for that. And similarly then, if you were on this desert island and you had, I'm presuming you played board games also when you were a child.
Yeah, we played lots.
Which were your favourites?
So I played Chinese checkers, Downfall, obviously Connect 4, all of the regular ones. Cluedo, we played a lot, Monopoly, all of the regular ones. But the one that I remember, because it was kind of the first board game I played, was a game called Run Rabbit Run, which was a real preschool game. It was probably 3 or 4 plus, so very young to be the first game I played with, and it had a Pop-O-Matic in the middle, and I was just fascinated with that Pop-O-Matic. I still am. You just can't. It's addictive, isn't it?
Yes, I totally agree with you.
Looking at it and seeing how it worked, and it had this amazing pack as well. Whereas nowadays everything's digitally put together. The art. You've got a lot of digital art on the pack, and this had the most beautiful work of art on the front of the pack of the farmer and these cute bunnies, and then the Pop-O-Matic in the middle. Yeah, it was amazing.
Now the Pop-O-Matic, I remember predominantly from Frustration, which may have been the first, and I think Run Rabbit Run was a sort of junior version of Frustration by the looks of it. Was you had to catch the rabbit, the farmer had to catch the rabbits.
So somebody was the farmer, and then the other 3 players were the rabbits, and the farmer had to catch the rabbits. So it was a very simple game. It wasn't innovative apart from the Pop-O-Matic in any way in terms of gameplay to kind of today's standards, I guess, but it was brilliant. It was just a great introduction into gaming that you did. You had the jeopardy between the rabbit and the farmer, and you had the Pop-O-Matic, so it did have kind of that bit of innovation, and then the nice story, which I like to talk about a lot, which I really like games to have stories of, and it's right, the farmer is chasing the rabbits around and the rabbits are trying to catch the carrots. So it works really well as a preschool game.
And you mentioned something there that I do think is interesting, because you and I are absolutely on the same page here from completely different worlds. As one of the strings to my bow is I'm a magician. And I don't particularly care to see a magic trick that makes no sense at all. I don't particularly care to see a magician tell me what they're doing. I always think that's a little bit, submental. I've got a pack of cards, they say. I'm going to ask you to take a card. Yes, I'm not an idiot. You're doing it. You don't need you to commentate on what you're doing. I like there to be what I always call the illusion of logic to a magic trick. I like there to be that you start telling a story about how you couldn't fix your plumbing, and there was a problem with the sink, and then you invent this device, and this device is part of the trick. And I know that you're the same with board games, that you don't like there to just be some silly little nonsense reason for doing it. Like, you said there, the run, rabbit, run.
Yeah, I do. I always think that there needs to be a story, because it just makes it intuitive then for children. It makes sense, the reason you're playing the game and the outcome of the game is because there's a story, and you need the start, middle and end to a story. So,
and I'm curious about that. So when you're sitting down and you've got an idea, how soon in the process do you personally sit there and think to yourself, gosh, this is a lovely idea for a game, but what would be the story? Is that the bit that you rack your brain, or do you have the idea of the story and then find a game?
It depends. It all works in different ways. It can be, the ideas come from all sorts of places. So it can be reading a comic, for example, of my son's, and a funny title, a funny name, and then you're kind of thinking, oh, that's a funny name. So what could the story be for that? Or what is the main product, plastic bit of that toy component? What could the feature be? So it depends where the idea has come from, really. And it might come from a story. It might, I love watching kids' films, and bits of stories in those can kind of come out, and you think, oh, that would make a good game if you were doing this. So it's kind of fluid, really, and organic in a way that, it depends where the idea has come from to begin with. But there will be a point in that process where I do go, right, okay, what's the story? Does this make sense? And I find that part of it really helps my thinking, because sometimes I will sort of see maybe a gadget or something that I think is quite clever, and I think, oh, there's a game in that. And then you kind of go, well, what's the story? What could the story be? What is that, and what part does it make, within that story?
Yeah. Which I do find that absolutely fascinating, because some of the games, we spoke about one earlier today. We won't name names, but we spoke about one of them. We just sort of, well, this is a nothing. This has got no reason to be, and I can't see why the people that invented that, with the greatest respect to them, wouldn't have sort of sat there and thought, well, yeah, this is a good idea for a game, but it makes no sense. Why don't we now think of a reason to justify this absurdity?
Yes,
I can't see why you wouldn't.
No, I can't either, but I guess I get a bit frustrated with that, because I can spend hours in my little shed in the garden coming up with, what is the story for this? I can't possibly pitch it in if it hasn't got a proper story and a narrative to it, and, the picture on the box. And so, it's frustrating when you see things out and you think, well, that was kind of what I was looking at, but it's...
And could it be argued that it's that we're wasting our time thinking like that? I mean, do you ever rock up and say, oh, this is the story, and you pitch it, and then people go, I like the mechanism, but this is a terrible idea.
Maybe. I don't know, though. I think the consumer likes a story. I think the consumer likes a reason to be, and especially kids, because it becomes intuitive if it's got a story. And even though they're more on screens nowadays, I'd like to think that a lot of the things they're doing, like Zelda, there's a story to it, or Mario Kart, is there a story to that? All the kind of kids have got a narrative, haven't they? And I think we should have that.
And you mentioned just now, and I'm glad you did. I was hoping it would come up, because you have a shed, which to me, you'll be surprised the number of people that talk about Sally Jacobs' shed. Down the bottom of the garden is a shed. Is it your office? Is it a storeroom? Is it a workshop? What happens in this shed?
In the shed, it's an office / workshop. So it's very small, but I'm really small. So it's a little box down the bottom of my garden, and one half of it is a computer desk office, and the other half of it is glue gun, saws, for making bits. So anything goes down in my shed. But it's this. I was going to be in there for this meeting, but anywhere I put my camera, I couldn't. You know, I needed to not show things. So
there was too much treasure on the shelves.
There's too much treasure. That's right. Beautiful. So yes, so I thought it was best to have the plain background. But down there is where you will find me, at the bottom of the garden, day in, day out, tinkering away.
And I'm curious, is anybody else? I mean, that's where I'd find you. But would I be allowed down there, or is that sort of strictly
no? No one's allowed. No one's allowed in my shed. My husband has been taking up occupancy, is that the word, in it over lockdown, but he's due to be evicted. So yeah.
Another hidden victim of COVID.
Yes, yes.
So, and your husband, of course, is Warren Jacobs.
Yes.
I should explain to those that don't know that you're married to another toy inventor.
I am, yes, yeah. We met at Hasbro, a Hasbro romance, and got together. So we've been together many years, and yeah, both in the toy industry. So that's fun.
And he works with Interplay.
That's right, yeah.
Is there ever a collaboration? Do you ever collaborate on ideas for toys and games, or is that something you sort of keep those two well separate?
No, we keep stuff quite secret. We did. We used to work together at Hasbro, and so we have worked on some projects together. But generally, yeah, we talk about work, obviously the industry. But if I've got ideas, I don't necessarily run them past him, and vice versa, I guess.
I quite like that. I quite like that sort of like, well, you know what, this is something that would be quite interesting to see two toy inventors discuss that, but really, in your precise circumstances, that makes no sense at all.
No.
Quite interesting. Out of interest, do we know who invented the Pop-O-Matic from Run Rabbit Run? Do we know who invented that thing?
No, I have no idea.
I should try and look into that. I think it's one of those things that, you know, you're still throwing a die, but for some reason it almost doubles the fun of a very, you know, dull action. But that maybe because there's a tactileness to it. And there is also an audio reward. It makes a very satisfying popping, and what is it? It's just a bit of stretched metal down the bottom. It's like a drum.
Yes, yeah. That picks up. But yeah, I guess it's quite instant as well. That, you know, and also because it's a machine, I guess, a gadget, that it's rolling the dice for you. Whereas well, my kids sometimes, you know, when you're rolling a dice, sometimes it'll be like, shh, and it goes on the floor, and they're like, yeah, we've got a stick that's over in that corner there. You know?
There's a 6 under the sofa.
And you kind of just throw it, and they're kind of keeping going for 5 minutes. It makes it instant, doesn't it? And there's no kind of hiding from the Pop-O-Matic decision.
I'm going to have to find who invented the Pop-O-Matic. Yeah. I think that's probably quite a big ask. It seems to me that comes from the days when there would have been wonderful inventions, but names would not necessarily have been attached to ideas that detailed.
Yes, yeah, I don't know with that one.
I'm going to look into it. So I should have done that before we did this call. I should have done some research, is what I'm saying. So My Little Pony is the toy. Run Rabbit Run is the Pop-O-Matic child's game that you would have taken to the desert island with you. And it begs the question, obviously Run Rabbit Run requires a number of other players. The question that it begs then is if you could be joined by any castaway, anybody at all, living or dead from history, who would you want on the island and why, I suppose?
Well, it would have to be my husband. And if I could take my dog as well. My husband and my dog.
Your husband and your dog. I permit this. Let's say it's one of those very accommodating seafaring accidents where you're allowed to rescue pets, people, and some possessions, but nobody else. That's quite sweet, though. I like that. And actually, I wonder over the pace of these interviews if anyone else would say their husbands. I think I would take Darren Brown and hang on a second. What about your loved ones? Oh well, yeah, them first, but then Darren Brown. And Warren, because he's your husband, for how many years is this now?
So we've been married for 15 years, but been together about 20 years. So a long time, yeah. He's the only one not put up with me on the desert island, I think.
Oh, I should have asked him. I should have called and said just before, because if it said somebody else, that would be terrible.
It would, wouldn't it?
I missed a trick there. I feel I feel I've let myself down. So Warren's not allowed in the shed. Do you think he ever sneaks down there when you're not looking?
No, I hide the keys.
Okay, brilliant. Brilliant. Now, moving on to the other idea that I'm really interested in is if an inventor could take an idea of their own to a desert island and say, of all of the things that I've done, I mean, you've done so much, I wouldn't know where to start. I wouldn't know where to start if I were you. You would have so much to sift through. But is there one idea of your own that you've come up with that you think to yourself, if I was stuck on a desert island and I was only allowed one of my own toys, which toy or game would that be?
Well, I think it would have to be the Play-Doh barbecue. It was one of the first things I did at Hasbro. I worked on Play-Doh. And just because you always need a barbecue on the desert island. And you can make little burger patties with it. And also what I really loved about it is that you could extrude a length of brown Play-Doh. And then you have these little scissors that would make it into a string of sausages. So you have a string of sausages. I love that. And the other thing was, when I was at Hasbro, we went to Ireland to see the Play-Doh being made, and Play-Doh was made down a food grade manufacturing aisle because in case children eat it. So at the end of the day, when I get hungry because I can't find any food on the desert island, I can actually eat the Play-Doh. So so that would be all right. It might be a bit salty. And also, you know, I like my nostalgia thing. I have a thing for the smell of Play-Doh. So when I do get smelly on the desert island, I can kind of use the Play-Doh.
That's a very practical choice. You're getting a little bit. You're getting a meal if you're desperate. A perfume of choice.
Yeah. And loads of play value. I think that's the thing. I still love Play-Doh because I just think it has so much play value to it. I mean, you can play with it over and over again. It never gets boring. You can make as many, you know, and it inspires creativity and imagination with kids. And all my kids have absolutely loved Play-Doh and playing with it.
I guess my question with Play-Doh would be that, I mean, that's a very, very old idea, and if I understand correctly, it originally started life as a wallpaper cleaner. Do you know this?
This is new to me.
Yeah, post-war, they used to dab it on the wall to get rid of soot, if I understand correctly.
Okay.
Then, with the invention of a certain type of wallpaper that was much easier to clean, this was no longer necessary. So the people that manufactured whatever this stuff was called more or less said, well, we don't know what to do with it. But a school teacher in the vicinity had said, well, let me tell you of another use for this. Some of the school kids played with it as this modeling dough. Lo and behold, you've got this ridiculously durable toy. I mean, it's been going on for donkey's years. But that to me is where I'm then interested in your creativity, Sal, because it seems to me that if you've just arrived at Hasbro, you've been at Hasbro a few years, and then they suddenly say, well, now you're going on to the Play-Doh line. To me, that must be a hell of a challenge, because presumably day one you sit there and what do you do? Do you have to go back through the back catalogue and say, well, they've done everything? Or do you say, well, this idea, and then do you just check your ideas to see if they've been done?
Well, we started with themes a lot of the time, but this particular item came from a new compound where the chemist in Rhode Island had put tiny bits of paper. I think it was the paper that money's made out of, so it didn't dissolve with the water in the Play-Doh.
Right.
And he created confetti dough, which was pink with bits of paper in it, which was really sweet. And so we had this kind of new compound sent over from Rhode Island, and it was like, what can we do with this? And if you made it brown, and then you put the paper in, which was little yellow and red bits, then it looked like mince beef and burger patties. So it's kind of, right, we have to do a barbecue. And obviously Play-Doh is brilliant for doing food products, you know, role-playing food items, because kids love, you know, making cakes.
I love that. That to me is extraordinary, because that's exactly the kind of thing I find fascinating, that you could have come at it from the angle of saying, well, what haven't we done before? And you might end up at a barbecue. But you can also say, well, this thing that happens to have come along, this new compound looks like something, and we could maybe do it like that. So there's two ways to arrive at that same idea. And ordinarily, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. I must ask more inventors about it. How often you come about it just by looking at something and thinking, well, what else could that be? What else? How does this relate to what I want to make?
I do find that fascinating. So barbecue Play-Doh, that's a good choice. I'm impressed with that. And to the other point then, I always am very curious about that in terms of the rest of the industry, because it's reasonable to say, although it's a close run thing in your case, Sal, but you have not invented as much as the rest of the toy industry put together. Only just. The rest of the industry just outpaces you. But in terms of looking at everybody else's ideas and saying, of all the ideas that I've ever seen, toys or games, another person's idea, which one would you say is?
So I would say Dobble, the game, because it's just a genius game, and generally I would have it on the desert island because it's always in my handbag. Because having 3 kids, you can play with, it's just easy to carry around with you. It's a quick game. They all love it. It's a level playing field. So my 8-year-old and my 14-year-old can play it. He probably win, but they all beat me. But it's a really quick game. It's genius. And the packaging is fantastic.
Yeah.
I just think it ticks so many boxes. It's a fantastic little game, and you play it over and over again, and you don't get bored with it. And I know I'd probably be on my own on the desert island or with my husband and dog. But if I got bored, I could try and work out the maths behind it, because there's something. How does that work? That would take me a few days, I'm sure, weeks.
Well, you know what? That's a really good point. I was looking down. I wasn't being rude. I was looking down because I had it on the chair in front of me. And for those that don't know Dobble, and if you don't know Dobble, welcome to Earth. The maths is extraordinary. Once you start thinking about it, the more you think about it, the more annoying it gets. It just eludes you. But the idea being that each one of 55 cards, I think it's 55, has a matching symbol. So only one symbol on here is in common with this one. I think it's what is it?
Apple.
Oh, it's the apple. Yeah. Oh gosh, we could play it over Zoom. I didn't realise you could play it over Zoom.
There you go.
Oh yeah, let's do it again. Let's do that again. I'm quite enjoying that. Oh my
Question mark.
Is it? Gosh, you're good at this. You carry it around in your handbag.
I've had lots of experience at Dobble.
I should carry it around in my handbag. But you're right. The 55 cards, where every card has one common symbol with another, but only one. The maths behind it is quite extraordinary. And I looked at it a few years ago. I don't recall why, but I did start to look into it, and I found yesterday this is the mathematical solution for Dobble.
Is it?
Yeah. And isn't that cool?
Get that off you after.
And it's one of those things where you look at it and you think, well, I'm none the bloody wiser.
I didn't do that now. After my homeschooling, I was doing a bit of, what are they called?
Algebra.
Algebra, that's the one.
Any sum where there's more letters than numbers, I'm out. I don't know. It's not for me. But yeah, and I think actually the thing that makes me most curious about that is if there are 55 cards. My understanding is with that formula, several different sites, as I recall, more or less say they could have had 2 more cards.
So why didn't they? Cost cutting.
Oh, maybe it is cost cutting. Maybe it is. Maybe 55 fits on the sheets.
Yes.
But that was my first question. Why wouldn't they have 57? I love that that's your first question.
It could be that.
Yeah. I've got a little bit of homework. I got to go and find a way. Why are those 2 cards missing? And
the Pop-O-Matic.
The Pop-O-Matic. Who invented the Pop-O-Matic? So that's good. That's a good choice. Dobble is an animal of a game. I can't see anybody ever arguing with that. That seems to me to be an absolute corker. And there must be something else you can do with that maths. I suspect if you dismantled the play patterns of Dobble, the maths would probably let you do some quite slow-moving, thoughtful, pensive strategy game if you so wished. It strikes me that the maths is the maths. That's if you go to all the effort of working out what the hell that means, you might as well get another game out of it. So I'm curious then, the Desert Island conceit when it's on the radio allows you luxury items.
Right.
So you would be allowed a book and a piece of music in our version of this. Obviously, normally it's not lots of pieces of music, but if you're allowed one book and one piece of music, which book and piece of music would it be?
Well, the book would be Danny the Champion of the World by Roald Dahl. Just because I love Roald Dahl books. I do a lot of reading, and I know it's a kid's book, but I am a bit of a kid at heart. And this is my favourite Roald Dahl book. His imagination and his wit just shows no bounds. He's brilliant, I think. And, you know, I've read this book so many times to my children. I never get bored of reading it or listening to it on audio cassette all the way to Cornwall. Audio cassette, audio CD.
No, I never picked up on cassette. I was with you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I just love the relationship with the father and son, and the fact they live in a gypsy caravan, and they're really poor, but actually they're the richest people in the world because they have a fantastic relationship and happiness. And then just the kind of innovative ways that Roald Dahl finds for catching pheasants or poaching pheasants in the book is amazing. The sticky hat and lacing sleeping tablets into raisins. And I remember reading it as a kid, and yeah, it's just I could read it over and over again, and I don't get bored of it.
Who did the audio version?
Do you know, I can't remember names. I'm not very good with names. But it'll come to me as soon as we've
I've got yes. As soon as we move on, it'll come.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay.
And also he has this message for children who have read the book in the back, which I'll read to you. When you grow up and have children of your own, do please remember something important. A stodgy parent is no fun at all. What a child wants and deserves is a parent who is sparky. So as a kid, you kind of read that, and you know, and as a parent, you read it, you kind of want to be that sparky parent. So I thought it was a really nice thing at the back of the book.
Yeah, that's quite nice. Roald Dahl's an interesting character. I think he has quite an interesting sort of. I've been to the Roald Dahl Museum up in.
Same.
Oh gosh, where is that?
In Great Bissenden.
That's right. Excellent. Well done. Yeah, to see that little, and he had a little garden shed by the look of it as well. Now just made that connection. It's in the blood. It's a creative necessity. You've got to have a shed. But to have his little chair and all his little knickknacks around him and see how he existed in that world, it's difficult because it's such a sort of normal looking world that he sat in, but the worlds that he creates are phenomenally imaginative. Really.
They are, and it's amazing that kind of parallel to if you read the autobiography about a boy and going solo and all the books that are about his life, and then you see, you know, how he took kind of him going to a sweet shop and then created Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, how his imagination kind of worked from that parallel, from everyday things that he saw. And I just really like that as a designer, because I think you have to go around. And you never come up with ideas sat at your computer and you go around and you think, well, you know, how can that be looked at differently? Or, you know, turn that on its head. And that's kind of what he did with all his books. And I just think that creativity and imagination is amazing. And it still stands, you know, the stead of time, is that the word? That, you know, kids still read them, and that, you know, they're amazing books.
And I think you're absolutely right about that. I think it's one of the tips that when I'm asked about creativity, and of course I don't just work in toys and games. I've done other industries, video production, and occasionally stuff for the medical industry. I know it sounds ridiculous, but as a copywriter, I've done a fair bit there. And anyway, when you're asked about, well, where do the ideas come from? Yes, but write it down in the notebook. Yes, but where does the very, very first idea come from? Because I think what you've just said is absolutely right. If you are walking down the street and you're doing nothing, you're just doing nothing towards creativity, then the most obvious thing in the world to me would be to sort of say, well, how does what I'm doing now relate to what I want to be doing? How can this be the idea for a toy or a game? And I think that's where a lot of the spark can come from, in knowing that there's nothing particularly innovative about boiling an egg. No. But there could be, if you're saying to yourself, well, how could boiling an egg be a game? In what way could chasing a rabbit be a game?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I do think
just
that's
turning things on their head and looking at the everyday in a kind of with a different viewpoint, I guess. Kind of, yeah. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And out of interest, then, what would be your step two? Let's say you've just had an idea. Do you write it down in the notebook straight away, or on the phone, or?
I generally email myself. Is that bad? Because I email myself or write it in my notes on my It's all technology now, isn't it? On my iPhone, on my iPad.
Yeah, I must confess, I personally still do use a notebook, handwritten notes. But a lot of practical stuff I put on the iPads and the iPhones and sort of say, well, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And I imagined when I started doing that, that the number of notes that I wrote in my notebook would decrease. But actually it went the other way. It's an odd thing. It meant that I vacuumed out a lot of practical notes and it was replaced by more creative notes. I'm happy to do that. We missed the music, by the way. I was so interested in what you were saying about Roald Dahl.
I just realised that. I missed the song. I went on about Roald Dahl.
No, that was fascinating.
It was Nina Simone. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. For no particular reason apart from I just love the emotion in this song, and it just, I don't know, it just makes my tummy go butterfly and goosebumps on my arms. I could listen to it over and over again, and it's not got any kind of tie with me or anything that's happened that kind of makes me want this song. It's just a beautiful song, and it just inspires a good feeling.
Well, do you know, I'm really pleased you said that, because when we've recorded a couple of these already, and when I have conversations like this with people, it's always slightly awkward when I've not heard the piece of music. And from my point of view, I have very strange tastes. If it's post Perry Como, I'm not really sure what they're talking about. Yeah, I'm a little bit like a high court judge. It's all very old-fashioned. But I'm delighted to say that, oh, that piece of music, Sal, I love it. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful song. And a lot of people don't necessarily recognise it as being, people of a certain age wouldn't necessarily recognise it as being the Barry Norman theme. Do you remember Barry Norman, this new film? It's the same song without the lyrics.
Yes.
But you're in good company. It was Stephen Fry picked that song as one of his on.
Did he?
So you're in very good company.
I think it might have been Stephen Fry that read the audio version of Roald Dahl.
Well,
Danny the Champion of the World. I'm pretty sure that's who I was thinking of.
I bloody well hope so. That would be awesome. It's meant to be. Yeah, that would be a good one. He'd be right. He'd be the right person for that as well. That would be a great narration. So yeah, great piece of music, really great. And Nina Simone, I don't know much about her, but I must find out more. It's also on my list of things now that I've heard more about her. By all accounts, it sounds like she was quite hard work. She sounds like she was, I think she was bipolar.
Oh, she? I don't really know that much about her. I love her music, and yeah, I don't know that much about
stories of her pulling guns on people over the slightest thing, and I mean, properly fascinating character, and her rights and her activism and so on and so forth makes her a very fascinating figure. So I'm going to try and find out a little bit more about her. It sounds to me that you're right. The emotion that she has when she sings feels to me like it is born of who she is. It's not one of these sort of cookie cutter things where you...
No, it's heartfelt, isn't it? And you can feel it in the song, and it just makes you go, oh, it just inspires this feeling, because you can feel the emotion in her voice. It's just amazing. Which
is the kind of creativity that I kind of look at that and I think, well, if you can bring... So I suppose I've used the word creativity there, but I'm going to change it. I think it's artistry. I think to be creative, and you can sort of churn out games and sort of say, well, we got to have a release, we got to have something to toy that. I think that's creativity. You can churn things out, but there's a difference between churning things out like that and being an artist like Nina Simone and being your heart. It's
your passion, exactly, and yes, totally, and that shows in the final piece, production, product, whatever it shows in the final thing.
Well, I'm curious then. Let me just bridge one question there. I'm really fascinated by what you think to this, because to my thinking, there has to be at times in toys and games, particularly, you've got to be less passionate. You've got to be less passionate, because by the time the idea that I've given and I show it to you and you say, the story is wrong for me, and then we pitch it and somebody else not that we have, but somebody else might look at our ideas and say, well, I love the idea, but I'm not going to do that story. If we felt the way about every idea that we have, the way Nina Simone feels about every lyric, we'd be crestfallen every time somebody made a change, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we might do, yes.
Is there room for artistry in toys and games?
Well, I think I don't know really. I think there is. Yes. You gotta love the thing you're putting out, but you've got to be careful. I think you can't be so passionate about that idea that you not going to let it go. You know, you go to all of the top people to pitch to, or everyone you need to pitch to, and everybody says no. You can't go, well, actually, this is my thing, and I'm an artist, and I love it. So somebody's, you know, at the end of the day, you think, right, okay, then all these companies said it was there was something wrong with it.
Yes.
Something wrong with it. So you can't be too kind of into the idea. You have got to kind of take a step back and look at it and kind of think of it from the consumer, or, you know, or from those specific manufacturers of what really they are looking for. But I think there is an element of artistry that you can add to your creations.
It's interesting. I guess there's a point at which you just have to let it go and say, well, I've cared so much, but I can't care too much. That's exactly. Where that line is would be different for everybody. Yes. Fascinating. So we're going to have to start wrapping this up, Sal, but I'm curious then, if you had all of these items, Danny Champion of the World, Nina Simone's song, My Little Pony, Run Rabbit Run, Play-Doh, it's a given that you would save the dog and Warren. I think that would be
yes.
But if the waves are lapping at the shores of our desert island, then you've only got to save one of those things ultimately. Which one of those things do you save?
I think I would save the book.
The book?
Yeah, I love books, but also just from a practical point of view, that if I needed to make a fire, you know, the book is useful. Or I could use it for other things as well. You might be able to use some charcoal to draw pictures in it. You always need paper.
Yeah.
I think I'd save the book.
Save the book.
Again.
Well, I'm quite glad in a way. There's something, isn't there, about books that as they. I mean, I'm very much a book person. I'm not in a hurry to switch. I do have some books on devices, but there are some books that I think, well, I'll look that up more easily on a reference here. But there are some books that you want to have the feeling of a book.
Oh, totally. I think I mean, I have a Kindle, and I read most of my books on there. But there's some books that you know I've got here that, you know, you want, like you say, to look through, and it's nostalgic, and you still treasure.
Yes,
so
yes,
it's
exactly
still
right.
Important to have some special.
And at the end of it all, as you rightly hinted back there, you can't use a Kindle for kindling. You can only use a real book to save yourself on the desert island. Finally, then, Sal, and this doesn't have to be morbid by any means, but if you were thinking and fearsome that you weren't going to get off the island, if you were afraid that you weren't going to get off the island, you want an epitaph to be found, what message finally would you put in a bottle?
Don't take life too seriously, have fun and keep playing.
Don't take life too seriously, have fun and keep playing. Yeah, that's good. That's good, isn't it? That's very sweet, very succinct.
It's short, isn't it? I didn't know. I mulled over this one. I didn't know what to put, but that's basically. I just think people should, you know, have fun and don't take everything seriously. Enjoy what you're doing, put passion into it, and you know, whatever you do should be fun. And keep playing, keep being a kid. It's important to kind of. Well, especially with what we do, to remember who the consumer is and immerse yourself in that consumer. I think I keep wondering when I'm going to grow up, but
but then I think that's.
I'm reading Roald Dahl, watching Secret Life of Pets, and playing with toys. I guess.
I think I could argue, Sal, and I can't remember. Somebody's made an excellent quote about this. That creativity and play are, you know, they're so similar in terms of what's happening in your brain. That I think people that stop playing to some extent surrender the ability to be creative, and it becomes a much more forced and contrived thing. And it is never a surprise to me to see people in a corporate environment who are struggling to be creative, and they have these dreadful brainstorming sessions, where they, oh my God, because they come in and they're all in suits and ties and they're stood in front of the whiteboard. So
you've got to free up your mind. Climb a tree as well. Go and climb a tree, and then you can see things from a different angle, especially if you're short like me, and then you can see things from high up and look at things in a different perspective. Yeah,
I completely agree. So thank you. Well, you've kind of given me the perfect out. Sal, keep having fun. And fun is exactly what this has been. This has been my outro. Fun is absolutely what I thought this would be, talking to you. I'm so glad you made time to do it. I know it's not your bag. not your cup of tea, but I think it was just terrific fun. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Sarah.
It went very quickly. Thank you very much.